Hi, thanks so much, Al. I'm ready to go here. So, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about my specific focus and specialty on teamwork. And that's very relevant to our current situation where we have the opportunity, as I'm sure Josh Burson's going to talk about more in his talk, to use this great reset and this work from home experiment to build some new skills for the future. So you gave a great explanation on Science for Work and what we do. For me specifically, coming here and representing Science for Work and a few other organizations, I just wanted to give folks a little bit of a background for where I'm coming from. I'm finishing up my PhD studying conflict and collaboration in teams at Western University in Canada. And so I'm really excited to bring some of the research that I've been studying over this past few years and have also brought that to bear on some consulting, speaking, and writing experiences across different industries to bring them sort of behavioral science into their workplace, but also in the past some work on marketing and sales as well. So today we're going to talk about a bunch of research that's sort of high quality and relevant practical work coming out of academia, which is the goal of the Science for Work organization, as you mentioned. Just a quick roadmap for today. We'll talk about the challenge of bringing teams fully remote as we're doing right now for many organizations that haven't been in this kind of situation before, and what the barriers are to effective teamwork from a distance. Then we have a lot of opportunities that we can discuss to improve some of these critical pillars of teamwork, moving into a less fully remote situation, but to also make our current virtual work and ongoing virtual teams more effective. Finally, we'll add in to this research-based approach a little bit of a people analytics lens on how we can test and improve the solutions that we'll talk about today. And then, of course, I'm really excited to get into your questions. So work right now looks a lot like home, at least for a lot of us who are able to work remotely as we're sheltering in place. You can see that these images are evoking the kinds of responsibilities, stressors, and concerns that we're dealing with in our personal lives. But of course, those are blending in to our work life as well. So we have potentially childcare responsibilities, elder care responsibilities and worries. And if you're in a situation like mine, you've got your pets jumping on your laptop all the time when you're trying to have a serious video call. So there's a whole bunch of things that are filtering in and adding stress to our work environment on top of the current sort of pandemic and the worries we're having around that. And this is borne out in a lot of data about distractions and challenges that are coming from the workplace. So Workalytics did this excellent report of metadata on the work from home event we're having now and how it's been changing the way that we work. So you'll notice there that we're actually having more meetings in total, although those meetings are smaller in size, that the dedicated focus time or opportunity for us to have deep work is less than it was before. And we're having more interruptions and after work emails in this COVID-19 kind of work from home period as we were before. This has a lot of implications for teams. It's enough of a challenge to try to get this work done on your own when you're in all these meetings. And yet the irony of having more meetings and more interruptions is we can still feel isolated from our team members. And a lot of the design of virtual work right now can kind of create that isolation through feedback delays. We're missing a lot of nonverbal cues or even body language that tells us a lot about how folks are reacting to us, and the burden of coordinating with other team members when we're working remotely and potentially in different time zones is much higher than it is when we're all together in person. But virtual teams aren't doomed to fail based on these challenges that they're facing. There's a lot of opportunity for us to use this reset to actually make teamwork better, regardless of where that team is working. Today, we're going to talk about three sort of pillars of teamwork and how we can improve on each of them to move forwards and level up our virtual and in-person teamwork skills. So specifically, we'll start by talking about the fundamental aspects of trust and social cohesion in groups and how we can still grow that from a distance and bring some of those skills back into the workplace afterwards. We're going to talk about how to improve communication quality and using certain virtual collaboration tools to clarify each of our roles in a team in real time. And finally, we'll talk about ways that we can leverage virtual teams to use a more structured brainstorming and creativity process. So team trust and social cohesion are really important pillars of key drivers of team performance from a lot of different research, some of which I'll summarize here. But the virtual team environment can give us some challenges and introduce some barriers to a team trust. If you look on the right side of the screen, you'll see that there's some barriers here in an infographic I've pulled from our Science for Work site. There's specific challenges that we face with virtual teams, one of which I already talked about are the social cues that we're missing. Even in a video environment where we can see each other, we're still missing that element of face-to-face eye contact, because it's very difficult for me to both look at you as you're looking at me if our cameras and our screens are off sync. And you can tell I'm trying to do it right now, but I'm going to have some trouble looking at both the slides and all of you on the other end here. We have some conflict potential because of the delayed responses taking a while to get back to folks based on timelines and also just interruptions that I've already talked about. And we're having some trouble knowing what's going on the other end with our team members. What is the context that they're dealing with? What are the kinds of roadblocks to their work that's getting in the way of them maybe doing the best they can? We can't really see those things, and that makes it a real challenge for us to appreciate some of the limitations that they're going through. Finally, there's a lot of risk of role ambiguity and a lack of clarity around what each of us is working on based on the challenge that we may end up overlapping in our work, or maybe no one gets a certain segment of our work done because it wasn't clear who was supposed to do what. These everyday behaviors that can show us we belong in the group, the kind of eye contact and body language that sends these small signals of team belonging and cohesion are missing a lot of times in a virtual context. And so this is the challenge that we're dealing with trust and social cohesion. But we have opportunities to use some great insights from behavioral science and recent books on tiny habits or atomic habits or the power of habit to build small behaviors into our virtual teamwork and in following back to our in-person work lives. And here are some three areas that we can consider building those tiny habits to increase trust and cohesion. One I'm really excited to tell you about is some research on gratitude. So we know how we feel when we're thanking others, and do something for others is very positive and powerful for us. But it's also contagious to our other group members. So in one study by Adam Grant and Francesca Gino, simply sending a thank you note to a team member makes them more likely to help another team member and builds on this kind of virtual cycle of positivity within the group. And that spillover is really present, and it really takes a small action that we can embed into our processes, ways we can recognize people and show gratitude. Next, trust is built through displaying our competence. So if I allow other people in my group to show and tell the work that they are doing, we can give them the confidence that their unique contributions to the team are valued. Finally, we think sometimes that talking about non-work topics in the workplace is irrelevant and doesn't necessarily do anything to help our productivity and our well-being. But scheduling regular informal chats can actually have these boundaries set around talking about everything that's not work and bring us a little bit closer to how our team members are doing, the challenges they're facing, and what's going on in the rest of their life. Moving to communication, this is one place where virtual teams can have a lot of challenges. We pulled one meta-analysis that takes together over 150 studies and over 9,000 teams to show that team communication was a real pillar of team success. And virtual teams specifically can suffer when they're not documenting that communication clearly. So that documentation can look like who is doing what are the deadlines for these tasks, and specifically which elements am I working on compared to some of my teammates. These are the key aspects that we're going to talk about in the next slide with some solutions around how virtual teams can communicate more effectively, as opposed to just bringing the workplace into our home and copying the model that we have in person, which we can tell is some of the reason perhaps we have so many meetings increasing in this virtual and remote work experiment. Here we see another infographic from Science for Work. This is on the principles of effective communication. Here we have both the content and what we need to remember when we're communicating specific aspects, but also how we can communicate with others to be most effective. What you can do is take these concepts and turn those into a checklist that is used within any team meeting or when you're sending out important messages to the whole team. You can make sure you're following these pillars of communication. Specifically, you can have a meeting moderator role that you rotate between team members that checks off that checklist, keeps everyone on track, and makes sure that people have what they need to document their roles and tasks. So one great thing that's sort of a silver lining about virtual work is that when I've been on calls with my colleagues at Science for Work, we can add in our assignments and deadlines into Trello directly, or tag folks in our Google Drive documents right away, which can make it easier to remember leaving that meeting. What was I supposed to do? What am I supposed to get done by the next time we meet? And really help us to get that clarity and reduce the ambiguity that comes with distributed work. And I'm really excited to talk about how we can actually improve creativity and innovation in a virtual team context by using some principles of effective brainstorming. So most of us think that the best brainstorming is done by throwing together some ideas when we're all sitting either in a room or virtually together. Let's just bounce ideas off each other and see what happens. Unfortunately, that form of brainstorming together actually leads us to have fewer ideas, and that those ideas are lower quality or less creative. Some of the challenges with that include that it's self-censorship that really takes some of our best ideas away from being submitted into the group, and the idea that the loudest voice in the room might dominate the conversation becomes a concern. Yet brainstorming apart, where we can each write down our ideas and then bring them to a collaborative discussion afterwards, can actually lead to us having more ideas and higher quality or more creative ideas within a brainstorming session. So we recommend a three-step approach to use this brain writing that we would do on our own as the first step in an effective brainstorming process. So virtual teams can type those ideas up into Google Doc. We can all put them in one place. It can even be an anonymous process that really helps focus on the ideas and the collaboration as opposed to the specific people. The second step, though, would use the power of the team dynamic to build on those ideas that we first come up with alone. And in these sessions where we can just build on each other's ideas, we really recommend to use this as a time to bring in some improv techniques. So the yes and approach from our friends at Second City is really effective to build and take ideas to the next level by using this time not to cut anything down, but really just to expand the ideas to be the best that they can be. But of course, we ultimately want to end up with a set of ideas that we know which ones are going to be more effective, what we should prioritize moving forwards. And so the third step is also very easily done in a virtual setting where teams can rate ideas on their feasibility and their likelihood to have a big impact. And so in a simple Google Sheets or in some polling tools, we can rate those ideas and come out of that meeting with more ideas, more creative and fully fleshed out ideas, but also a set of the most important things to consider moving forwards. Bringing this all together with a people analytics approach, we know that an evidence-based approach is both taking insights from existing research, but of course testing those within our own company's context, given that the context is so important. So we recommend to track some of these critical teamwork metrics you can see. On the right side are some sample questions that folks can use in surveys to capture each of the important pillars that we've talked about and to measure these over time in various formats. So the previous O&A talk is a great example of using newer approaches to get more insights, especially in a team environment that is really important to understand those connections. And after we've been tracking that data in over this transition that we've been having, or even in a business as usual context, we can introduce some of these solutions that we've discussed to a set of teams and compare that with the control group or a wait list that's not currently using these approaches to see how this is impacting the team pillars that we've talked about. It's ideal, of course, that we would have a control group, but very difficult to do those kinds of comparisons within a company situation. So if you're starting to share these ideas around your organization, you can have a rollout that you compare a department that hasn't yet received this kind of insight with another department that's already using some of these tools. And then, of course, taking an agile approach to adapt the solutions that you see based on the data that's coming back from your teams will really help to bring these solutions to the next level in terms of how you can customize them for your specific company's context. Perhaps these solutions helped with communication, but you're still having some team cohesion challenges. That's somewhere that you'll want to brainstorm or adapt some of the solutions we've talked about to your specific company. Overall, we're really excited to bring some of this research to bear on companies as they can improve their teamwork for the new way of working that we're going to see moving forwards. And so I'm really excited to answer some of your specific questions on how we can strengthen teamwork and what kind of skills we can use both in a virtual and a face-to-face context.
Thank you, Natasha. That was impressive. Obviously, we're in this experiment that we never anticipated coming, and remote work, virtual work is the norm now all of a sudden. And I loved as you were sharing some of these ideas where the brain writing and the idea that communication, clarity. Just a quick sidebar. Obviously, this work was going on a while ago, preceding COVID-19. And I reflect on Dr. Jeffrey Pfeffer talking about wellness at our conference in San Francisco earlier the year. The
Mhm.
thing about what's happening, and we're going to talk about this over the next 2.5 days now, is people not only have work-life balance challenges, work-life integration, whatever word you want to apply to it, is their
Mhm.
capacity is getting strained. So being a good communicator historically might be responsive to emails, following up. But, if I'm trying to take care of my family, trying to take care of my coworkers, and everyone's in front of email,
Mhm.
is that something that you're looking into? And do you have some thoughts on, what the experience is given, all these challenges that have emerged?
Excellent question, Al. I was just actually reading a perfect article on this yesterday, talking about the parent company of WordPress and how they have a fully virtual company that works globally and have adapted a lot of the ways that they communicate to not demand so much always on, constant, immediate responses, because we do know
Mm.
that in this current situation, it's not possible to do that all the time and will create more of a burden on us, but also that it's not always necessary. And so, how do we have effective asynchronous communication and more efficient communication so that we don't actually need to be on maybe as many calls or chats that are specifically happening at all the same time? And so, one insight that they had is to make that asynchronous communication easier through three simple steps that they use in any time they're assigning a task or collaborating with others. And one example message they had said, hey, can I get you to work on this proposal by 4 p.m. tomorrow? So you have a clear task that you're providing the person, you have that clear deadline. And then what is the way that they can contact you, or what's the emergency if you're having any confusion? So then they say you can reach me at this cell number, or I'll be online between this specific period of time in your given time zone. So I agree that if we're just bringing the current workplace into our home, that's not going to be effective. And that's actually going to create more challenges and stressors, as you mentioned, from the conflict between family and other things we have. So, how do we go beyond what they call the level two work from home, is just replicating all those meetings, having all those conference calls, to a form of effective communication that we don't need to be always discussing it in the moment, but that I give you the information you need and you work on it as needed on your own time.
Yeah, love it. I'm glad you're doing this work. And I was thinking as you were presenting, you followed some rock stars this morning, and of course, talking about European time, and
Yes.
you more than held your own. I mean, it was really, really impressive. So, congratulations on the work that you're doing. Keep up the
Thank
great
you so
work.
much.
And how can people learn more and get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So, for Science for Work specifically, you can see some of the infographics and some broader research summaries on our site. We have a lot of content around teamwork, but we do cover other aspects of the workplace, from recruitment, hiring, retention, leadership, and learning and development. So that's at scienceforwork.com. And please reach out to me. I'm really happy to talk about these concepts and how we can bring these to organizations more effectively. Thanks so much, Al. It's been really excellent, and it's a high bar to meet the folks that we've had following and preceding me, but I'm really glad to be included as well. So thank you.